The lively atmosphere of JFK International Airport buzzed with the sounds of rolling suitcases, boarding calls, and the occasional laughter from travelers. Vanessa Mitchell strode through the terminal with confidence, her Louboutin heels echoing. On the polished floor, her impeccably tailored navy blue suit sharp and professional. Tomorrow morning, she had a crucial meeting in Los Angeles, a meeting that could seal a multi-million-dollar expansion deal for her airline, Sky America. As she approached the first-class check-in counter, she noticed a middle-aged man in a standard airline uniform behind the desk. His name tag read Robert Stevens. He barely glanced her way and offered a tight, somewhat forced smile. "Good evening, ma'am," he said. "Economy check-in is that way." He gestured broadly toward the far end of the terminal, pointing at the long line of weary travelers waiting at the economy desks. Vanessa raised an eyebrow. "I'm aware of where the economy check-in is, but I won't be needing it. I'm flying first class." She slid her boarding pass and passport across the counter. Robert hesitated before picking up the boarding pass. His fingers lingered over the printed details, and he finally looked up, his smile fading. "I'm sorry, ma'am," he said slowly, as if explaining something to a child. "Are you sure this is your ticket?" Vanessa took a deep breath, having dealt with this kind of subtle skepticism before, those insidious moments where someone like Robert questioned her right to be in a space that he assumed was beyond her reach. "Yes," she replied, her voice unwavering. "I'm very sure." He pursed his lips, scrutinizing the ticket more closely and even flipping it over, as if searching for a mistake. "This is for seat 2A, he pointed out. "Yes," she confirmed. He let out a short, humorless laugh. "That's first class." Vanessa tilted her head, fixing him with a cool gaze. "Yes, I know." A tense pause followed. His fingers drummed against the keyboard. "I just need to verify something," he announced, turning to his screen. She watched as he typed with exaggerated slowness, his brow furrowing in what seemed to be mock concentration. As the moments dragged on, the line behind her grew longer, punctuated by impatient sighs. "Is there a problem?" she inquired a bit, more pointedly now. Robert exhaled dramatically. "It's just that I don't see a confirmation under this name." Vanessa's jaw tightened. "That's impossible. The reservation was made through my corporate account." Robert didn't seem convinced. He glanced over at the young blonde, woman at the next counter, Jessica Miller, as her name tag indicated. "Jessica, can you take a look at this?" Jessica walked over, barely acknowledging Vanessa before grabbing the ticket from Robert's hand. "What's the issue?" Robert asked, amusement evident in his voice. "She claims she has a first-class reservation, but I can't find it in the system." Jessica let out a long sigh, clearly exasperated, and turned her attention to Vanessa. "Ma'am, where exactly did you purchase this ticket?" Vanessa maintained her composure while trying to navigate Sky America's executive booking system. Jessica's eyebrows shot up. "Executive booking?" She burst out laughing. "Right." Vanessa crossed her arms. "Is there a reason you're treating me like a criminal instead of just properly checking the reservation?" Jessica's expression cooled. "There's no need for that tone, ma'am. We're just trying to ensure there's no misunderstanding." Vanessa's patience was thinning. "A misunderstanding? You mean the misunderstanding where I, a fully paying customer, present my ticket and passport, and instead of checking me in, you're questioning my presence here?" Jessica rolled her eyes. "Look, I don't know how you got this ticket, but—" She abruptly stopped, a smirk forming as she ripped the ticket in half right in front of Vanessa. Stunned, Vanessa blinked. Jessica tossed the torn pieces onto the counter. "Maybe next time you'll book a ticket that reflects reality." An uncomfortable silence settled over the check-in area. Nearby passengers gasped, while others murmured among themselves. Someone chuckled quietly. Vanessa's hands twitched at her sides. "You," she began, her voice low and dangerously calm. Jessica shrugged. "I don't make the rules." Vanessa clenched her jaw. "You just destroyed my boarding pass." Jessica crossed her arms defiantly. "You can always try flying economy. If you even bought a ticket at all. The humiliation surged within Vanessa, with the stares of onlookers weighing heavy. She opened her mouth to respond, but before she could, Robert leaned closer over the counter, lowering his voice. "Ma'am," he said, dripping with condescension, "if you keep making a scene, we'll have to call security." "You just ripped my boarding pass," she shot back. Robert stood up straight. "Security!" he called out loudly. Moments later, 2 security guards appeared, their faces unreadable, hands resting on their belts. "What's the problem here?" one of them inquired. "This woman is causing a disturbance." Jessica flicked her hair back, her voice rising in urgency as she protested at the first-class check-in. She was embroiled in a ticket dispute, refusing to budge. The guards shifted their attention to Vanessa. "Ma'am, we need you to step away from the counter," one of the guards stated firmly. Vanessa's heart raced in response. "I'm not going anywhere." "I paid for my seat," she insisted, but the taller guard sighed, barely concealing his irritation. "Either step aside, or we'll have to escort you out." A wave of unease washed over Vanessa. She had fought hard to reach this point, to be in this moment, and now she felt like an outsider, an unwelcome one at that. Just as the guards started to close in, a loud voice cut through the tension. "What the hell is happening here?" Oh, figure forged its way through the crowd. It was David Harper, Vanessa's assistant, visibly breathless, with wild, alert eyes. In his hand, he brandished his corporate ID along with a Sky America folder. "Are you out of your minds?" he snapped, thrusting the ID towards Robert. "Do you even know who this is?" Robert momentarily faltered in confusion. Jessica stood motionless, shock frozen on her face. The guards hesitated, caught off guard. David swiftly turned to Vanessa, concern etched on his face. "Are you all right?" he asked, his breath coming in quick bursts. Vanessa took a deep breath, nodding. "I'm fine." David's jaw tightened as he turned back to the stunned security personnel. "This woman," he declared sharply, "is not just any first-class passenger." Silence enveloped them, heavy and tense. "This woman," David pressed on, his voice brimming with intensity, "is the CEO of Sky America Airlines." In an instant, Robert turned pale, and Jessica's eyes widened, darting between Vanessa and David as if she were hoping for some twist to this unfolding drama. Vanessa squared her shoulders, locking eyes with Robert. The moment of humiliation was over. Now, a reckoning was underway. The atmosphere felt electric, with only the faint crackle of the airport intercom breaking the silence. Jessica remained rooted in place, her complexion devoid of color. Robert's mouth opened slightly, but no words emerged, swallowed by his disbelief. The security guards exchanged anxious glances. They couldn't believe it. They had just humiliated the CEO of the very airline they represented. David Harper broke the quiet with urgency. He stepped forward again, ID badge still raised. "I need both of your names," he demanded, his tone unwavering. Robert gulped. "This has to be a mistake." "The only mistake here," Vanessa interjected, her tone slicing through the air, "was thinking I didn't belong." Jessica blinked, her eyes flitting between Vanessa and Robert. "I didn't know who you were," she stammered, but Vanessa merely let out a short, humorless laugh, the tension hanging thick in the air. "Oh, so if I were just another passenger, it would have been fine to tear up my ticket and humiliate me in front of everyone?" Jessica opened her mouth, then quickly closed it again. Robert struggled to regain some control over the situation. "Look, Miss Mitchell, this was an honest misunderstanding. I didn't mean any disrespect. I was just following protocol," he said, irritation creeping into his tone. "Protocol?" Vanessa cut him off sharply. Her voice held steady, but the fury was simmering just beneath the surface. "Tell me, Robert, does your protocol include interrogating first-class passengers about whether they have the right to be there? Does it include destroying their boarding passes or summoning security the moment they push back?" Robert remained silent. Vanessa stepped closer, lowering her voice deliberately. "I built this company from the ground up. I fought for every bit of success I have, and you thought you could dismiss me like I was nothing." Robert's mouth twitched. "I didn't mean to—" "But you did," Vanessa interrupted. "If David hadn't walked in when he did, I would have been dragged out of this airport like a criminal." A crowd of passengers had gathered nearby, murmuring among themselves. A few held their phones up, recording everything. The weight of the scene pressed down on the employees. Jessica suddenly snapped back to attention. "Please, Ms. Mitchell, I can fix this," she said hurriedly. "Let me reprint your ticket. Let me—" "Don't bother," Vanessa replied coldly. "You've made it clear that you don't think I deserve to be here." Jessica flinched at the sharp tone. David turned to the security guards, ire rising within him. "And you two? Do you routinely remove passengers without even questioning what's going on?" The taller guard shifted uncomfortably. "We were just acting on orders," he stammered. "Right, because when a black woman stands up for herself, it's easier to assume she's the troublemaker, isn't it?" David shot back. The guard fell silent. Vanessa took a breath, steadying herself. The humiliation still stung, yet she refused to let it dominate her thoughts. She faced David. "I want this addressed immediately. Call corporate. Get HR involved." David nodded, pulling out his phone without hesitation. After one last scrutinizing glance at Robert and Jessica, Vanessa turned sharply and walked away, as she finally settled into her first-class seat with a replacement ticket. Printed under David's supervision, she felt the weight of what had just happened. Her phone buzzed relentlessly in her bag. Texts, emails, missed calls. "Vanessa," David said from the seat beside her, his phone lighting up as well. "It's already online." She sighed in response, the reality of the moment settling. And absolutely. Passengers were filming everything. The instant Robert challenged her ticket, the moment Jessica tore it in two, the security guards intervened as if she posed a threat. Then came the pivotal moment when David disclosed her true identity. The CEO of Sky America Airlines, treated like a fraud by her own staff. David turned his phone screen to face her. Twitter was exploding. Incredible. A black woman attempts to board first class and is treated like a criminal, and it turns out she's the owner of the airline. Disturbing behavior from Sky America's employees. How many other passengers have they shamed? Vanessa Mitchell is a force to be reckoned with, and they tried to undermine her achievements. Reflect on that. Vanessa scanned through a torrent of responses. Some stood up for her. Others debated if it was an overreaction. She faced David. "Corporate is going to freak out." David nodded. "They should. But honestly, let them." She let out a sigh and leaned back into her seat. This isn't merely about her. It's about how many others have faced this before, those who lacked the power to defend themselves. Her grip on her phone tightened. "I want an internal investigation," she stated firmly. "I want to find out if this was the first time Robert and Jessica acted like this, or if it's a recurring issue." David paused. "Do you genuinely believe there's more to this?" Vanessa stared out the window, the runway spanning, endlessly beneath them. "I suspect this kind of behavior doesn't arise out of nowhere," she murmured, "and I want to trace its origins." David's phone buzzed again. He checked the screen. "HR wants a meeting first thing tomorrow." Vanessa nodded. "Good." She redirected her focus to her phone. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. With a deep breath, she typed, "I've dedicated my life to breaking barriers. Tonight was a reminder that the fight isn't over yet. No one should ever have to prove they belong, especially not in a space they cultivated. This isn't just about me. It's about all of us, and I promise, change is on its way." She hit post, and within moments, notifications began pouring in. Vanessa closed her eyes. This was far from over. It was only the beginning. She had always understood that corporate justice moves at a snail's pace, but not this time. The next morning, she strode into the Sky America boardroom, her charcoal gray suit exuding authority. Her face was a mask, but beneath it, Anger simmered. Seated around the sleek, glass-topped table were 5 top executives, including Mark Reynolds, the Senior VP of Human Resources, and Cynthia Lowe, the Chief Operating Officer. Beside Vanessa, David Harper was ready with his laptop, fingers hovering above the keys. Mark cleared his throat. "Vanessa, first of all, let me say how truly sorry we are for what happened last night. It was unacceptable, and we're treating this with the utmost seriousness." Vanessa folded her arms tightly. "Are you?" Mark hesitated. "Of course. We've placed Robert and Jessica on administrative leave while we conduct our investigation." "Administrative leave?" Vanessa repeated, her voice cutting through the air. "Not fired?" Cynthia leaned in, hands clasped. "We want to follow proper procedures," she said. Vanessa scoffed. "You mean cover your backs?" A tense silence enveloped the room. David clicked on his laptop and turned the screen toward everyone. "In case anyone's still confused about what happened, let's take a look." He hit play. The room filled with the now infamous video. Robert's skeptical tone rang out. "Are you sure this is your ticket?" Jessica's mocking grin followed. "Maybe next time you'll book a ticket that matches your reality." The sound of tearing paper. Laughter, gasps, humiliation. Vanessa remained stone-faced as the footage replayed, but Mark and Cynthia were visibly affected. When the clip concluded, Mark let out a heavy sigh. "This is bad." David didn't even blink. "No, this is catastrophic. If you don't take swift action, it'll escalate." Cynthia rubbed her temples. "We need to issue a statement right away. Public outrage is already brewing." "Forget the statement," Vanessa interrupted. "We need answers." She turned to Mark. "Why was Robert Stevens hired?" Mark frowned, caught off guard. "Excuse me?" "You heard me." Vanessa broke the silence. "What's his employment history? Did we conduct a thorough background check?" Mark hesitated, unsure of how to respond. "We do routine checks on all employees." "Do we?" Vanessa's gaze sharpened. "Because I did some digging myself." David slid a folder across the table, catching everyone's attention. Mark took the folder, flipping through the pages, his expression shifting to one of alarm. Vanessa leaned in closer. "Can you explain why Robert Stevens was fired from West Airlines 5 years ago?" Cynthia turned to Mark, her eyes wide. "What?" Mark's voice quaked. "I had no idea." Vanessa quickly interjected. "That's because someone chose to remain uninformed." She produced her own copy of the West Air termination report, holding it like evidence. Robert was terminated due to numerous complaints of racial discrimination from both passengers and co-workers. He even faced a lawsuit from a black flight attendant after making inappropriate remarks about her working in first class. Cynthia's expression hardened further, the weight of the revelation sinking in. "And we brought him on board?" Vanessa slammed the report on the table. Either HR didn't conduct a basic background check or someone willfully ignored the warning signs and allowed this to happen. Mark swallowed, looking uneasy. "I'll need to get to the bottom of this." Vanessa cut him off. "You should have already done that." David chimed in. "And before you attribute this to an oversight, let's remember that negligence isn't an excuse for discrimination." Mark set down the report, his hands trembling. He was at a loss for defense. Vanessa's voice was steady but edged with urgency. "Robert should have never been hired. Because of this oversight, Sky America is facing a PR nightmare." Cynthia exhaled, her fingers massaging her temples as if trying to relieve the pressure building there. Good grief. But Vanessa wasn't done. "Jessica Miller needs to go, and quickly. This is more than just about her." She turned toward Mark with intensity. "I want a comprehensive internal audit of our hiring practices. Every employee must be properly vetted. We cannot allow this oversight to happen again." Mark nodded weakly. "Understood." Cynthia leaned back in her chair, already brainstorming strategies to manage the fallout. "And Robert?" Vanessa's gaze turned cold. "Fire him today. and ensure that every airline in the industry is informed about why. Cynthia nodded resolutely. Done. Mark's fingers drummed nervously against the table. And Jessica? Vanessa didn't hesitate. She's out too. No one dared to counter her words. The atmosphere in the boardroom was thick, not with disagreement, but with a palpable sense of fear. Vanessa commanded this moment. She had devoted her life to carving out a space in settings like this. And now, she was determined that the next person who resembled her wouldn't need to struggle in the same way. This was the tipping point. By mid-afternoon, Sky America had made an official statement. After a thorough review of the incident involving our CEO, Vanessa Mitchell, we are taking immediate action to address the unacceptable behavior demonstrated by our employees. Effective. Today, Robert Stevens and Jessica Miller are no longer with Sky America Airlines. Furthermore, we are launching a comprehensive review of our hiring practices and training programs to guarantee that every passenger receives the respect and dignity they deserve. Discrimination is completely unacceptable within our company. Period. The reaction was prompt, and rightfully so. Actions carry more weight than mere words. Vanessa Mitchell was demonstrating what true leadership looks like. It was high time that those harboring racist attitudes faced consequences. Robert Stevens's name began to trend online within hours. Old allegations resurfaced. Former colleagues from West Air shared their own unsettling experiences. By nightfall, Robert's aviation career had reached its end. As for Jessica, she made a futile attempt to defend herself in a now-deleted tweet. "I didn't mean it that way. This is being exaggerated." But nobody was convinced. Vanessa refused to spend time fretting over them. Her sights were set on larger ambitions. A pivotal decision awaited. That evening, Vanessa found herself in her home office, sifting through a flood of emails and messages of encouragement. She should have celebrated a victory. Instead, weariness enveloped her. Across the desk sat David, his arms folded. "You know, this could evolve into something beyond just an internal resolution." Vanessa raised her brow. "What do you mean?" He leaned in closer. "This incident? It extends beyond Sky America. Airlines nationwide face similar issues. What if you advocated for genuine industry-wide change?" Vanessa released a slow breath. "That's a monumental battle." David smiled knowingly. "But if anyone can win it, it's you." She had contemplated this for years. She had fought for her own presence. Maybe it was time to advocate for others as well. She inhaled deeply. "Let's do it." David's grin widened. "That's the spirit I was hoping for." Vanessa closed her laptop, feeling something she hadn't felt since that demoralizing experience at the airport control. This wasn't a conclusion, it was the inception of something powerful. The Sky America headquarters had always prided itself on efficiency. Today, though, it resembled a battlefield. The executive floor was unusually silent, yet a palpable tension filled the room like the electric charge before a storm. Employees exchanged whispers, casting anxious glances whenever Vanessa passed by. She brushed it off. After all, the news was already out. Robert Stevens and Jessica Miller were out. The internal memo, signed by Vanessa herself, was blunt. Sky America Airlines does not tolerate discrimination. We are dedicated to treating every passenger, regardless of their background, with respect and dignity. Effective immediately, we will conduct a thorough review of all employee conduct and hiring practices. Vanessa sat in her office, sifting through a flood of emails. Reactions from employees, shareholders, and customers were mixed. Some praised her decision, while others expressed their resentment. A few were simply frightened. She had anticipated the diverse responses. A sharp knock at her door drew her attention. "Come in," she called out. David stepped inside, closing the door carefully behind him. "So you've officially upset half of corporate America," he remarked. Vanessa smirked. "Took me long enough." David sank into the chair opposite her. "Are you ready for your next headache?" he asked. She sighed, already knowing what he would say. "Let me guess. Jessica is planning to sue?" David let out a chuckle. Naturally. She released some lengthy statement about being unfairly villainized, insisting she was just doing her job. He rolled his eyes. Now she's claiming wrongful termination. Vanessa shook her head. Good luck with that. The video evidence is clear. Exactly, David agreed. But she's not the real issue. Vanessa raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? David slid his phone across the desk. Robert finally spoke out. She hesitated before picking up the phone. The screen displayed a news article that made her stomach churn. Fired Sky America employee speaks out. The headline read, I was punished for doing my job. She scrolled through the article, her heart sinking as she read Robert's claims of unfair dismissal, all stemming from a misunderstanding involving CEO Vanessa Mitchell. I was just trying to follow protocol, Stevens said. I never intended to offend anyone, but here I am, out of a job for simply questioning a ticket. This is the worst kind of corporate overreach. Vanessa felt her anger rise. David leaned in closer. It gets even worse. Now he's playing the victim, lamenting about his family and how he's being canceled for something he didn't do. And of course, there are those online who are sympathetic to him. Vanessa's jaw tightened. So, I'm the bad guy now? David sighed. To some people, yeah. Vanessa threw her phone down onto her desk in frustration. Unbelievable. It's predictable, David added. Some people will always back guys like him. But the truth is, facts don't care about feelings. And the truth is, he got himself fired. Vanessa breathed out slowly, pinching the bridge of her nose. She had fought too hard to let this devolve into a sympathy fest for Robert Stevens. Has the industry responded yet? She asked. David nodded. That's the part you'll appreciate. Other airlines are watching this closely. A few have even reached out about implementing stricter anti-discrimination policies. Vanessa's expression softened. Good. That's exactly what I wanted to hear, David said with a smirk. And it's all thanks to the meeting that shifted everything. Later that afternoon, Vanessa found herself facing the board of Sky America. 12 men and women in suits, all powerful, all influential, and all scrutinizing her intently. Cynthia Lowe, the COO, cleared her throat. Vanessa, let's be straightforward. You're shaking up this company in ways that some aren't comfortable with. Vanessa didn't flinch. Good. Cynthia exhaled. We're not saying we disagree with your actions, but you must realize that decisions like these impact our investors, partnerships, and bottom line. Vanessa interrupted. You mean they impact the status quo? A low murmur spread among the board members. Cynthia's lips thinned in response. Vanessa, let me ask you this. Vanessa cut her off again. When I was humiliated at that airport, did any of you think about our bottom line then? Or was it only a concern when it became a public issue? Silence filled the room. Vanessa leaned forward. I'm not asking for permission to fix what's broken. I'm taking action because this isn't just about public relations. It's about people. It's about integrity. And if Sky America aims to lead the industry, we need to go beyond what's convenient. We must do what's right. A few board members exchanged uncertain looks. Cynthia let out a soft sigh. So, what are you proposing? Without missing a beat, Vanessa replied, we form an industry-wide diversity and accountability task force. We'll collaborate with other major airlines to implement meaningful policies against discrimination, not just pay lip service. We will set stricter hiring standards, ensure transparent reporting procedures, and enforce a zero-tolerance policy for this kind of behavior. The room fell silent. Then, Howard Ellis, one of the senior board members, chuckled softly. Vanessa, you know this is going to upset a lot of people, he remarked. Vanessa maintained her smile. Well, I suppose that means I'm on the right track. There was a moment of reflection. Slowly, Howard nodded in agreement. Cynthia sighed again. Let's talk logistics then. In that instant, Vanessa realized she had secured her victory. The final step. Later that evening she found herself in her office, gazing at the city skyline. Her phone vibrated. A message from David. "David, check the news." Curious, she opened a news app and there it was. Sky America CEO Vanessa Mitchell announces industry-wide initiative against discrimination. Her heart raced with joy. This was more than just her story. Now, she had transformed her humiliation into decisive action. David texted again. "David, you ready for the real fight?" Vanessa smiled to herself. "Always ready, Vanessa." She set her phone down and looked out at the skyline. The battle wasn't over yet, but for the first time in ages, she felt like she truly had support. A month later, Vanessa Mitchell stepped onto the stage at the International Aviation Leadership Conference in Washington, D.C. An auditorium filled with executives, policymakers, and journalists awaited her. The stakes had never been this high. She adjusted the microphone, scanning the audience. Some faces were familiar. Rival airline CEOs, government officials, corporate investors. Some had openly criticized her actions. Others were there, waiting to see if she would falter. Taking a deep breath, Vanessa began. "This past month I've been told countless times that my experience at JFK was an isolated incident, that it was simply an unfortunate misunderstanding." A pause for effect. But the truth is, it was not an isolated case. Silence enveloped the room. This wasn't the first time something like this has occurred, and if we choose to ignore it, it certainly won't be the last. Vanessa scanned the room, aware that we often tout our industry as a model of progress, efficiency, and service. But let's face reality. We have let people down, both passengers and employees alike. A wave of murmurs swept through the audience. "Too often," Vanessa continued, her tone unwavering, "we have allowed bias and complacency to dictate our operations. We've maintained outdated hiring practices, ignored discrimination, and chosen silence over speaking out against injustice. But those days are over." She paused to let that message resonate. "Today, I'm thrilled to announce the formation of the Aviation Equity and Accountability Task Force, a coalition of leading airlines dedicated to fostering diversity, accountability, and transparency in our hiring, training, and treatment of both passengers and staff." A smattering of applause erupted, with some in the crowd nodding in agreement. "Let me be clear," she asserted. "This is not about public relations. It's not about fulfilling corporate checklists. This is about establishing a new standard, a standard where no one feels like they don't belong in spaces that are rightfully theirs." The applause grew stronger. Vanessa's gaze swept over the audience until it met a familiar presence. Howard Ellis, the skeptical board member from Sky America. A slight nod exchanged between them signified mutual understanding. With a deep breath, she continued, "And let me stress this, change is never easy. It brings discomfort. It compels us to face issues we often prefer to overlook. But change is essential. Whether we're ready for it or not, it is already upon us." The crowd rose to their feet in a standing ovation. For the first time, since that difficult day at JFK, Vanessa felt a sense of relief. She had transformed the lowest moment of her career into something far more meaningful. She was no longer merely fighting for respect, she was asserting it. A week later, Vanessa found herself in line at the Sky America first-class check-in. This time, her attire was far more casual: jeans, a blazer, and sneakers in place of a sharp suit and heels. She wanted to witness the changes firsthand. At the counter, a young black woman greeted her, Tia Reynolds, as her name tag indicated. Vanessa stepped forward and handed over her ticket. Tia quickly entered information into the system before glancing up with a friendly smile. "Welcome to Sky America, Ms. Mitchell. Thank you for flying with us." There was no hesitation, no doubt about her place. Vanessa smiled back, feeling a sense of belonging. As she made her way toward security, she caught snippets of conversation from nearby passengers. "That's her," one whispered. "Vanessa Mitchell." Another added, "She really changed things, didn't she?" Vanessa ignored them, aware that she didn't need validation. She had already claimed her victory. In the final act, at 40,000 feet, she sat by the window, absorbed in the endless expanse of blue. David nudged her shoulder. "What's next?" he asked, a playful grin on his face. Vanessa smirked in response. "Oh, I'm sure the universe will have a new challenge for me before long." David chuckled. "You just can't resist, can you?" She shrugged nonchalantly. "Not a chance." Just then the flight attendant arrived with a drink. "Ms. Mitchell, the captain sends his compliments," she said as she set down a glass of champagne. Vanessa raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "I take it he's on board with my little revolution." The attendant beamed. "I think quite a few people are." Vanessa lifted her glass, watching the effervescent bubbles dance. Years of battling glass ceilings had led her to this moment, where she was now effortlessly soaring above them. With a light clink, she tapped her glass against David's. "To flying higher," she declared. David returned her smile. "To flying higher." As their plane sliced through the clouds, Vanessa closed her eyes, shedding the burdens she had long carried. No matter what awaited her, she was certain of one thing: she would never be grounded again.